It was just made for the woe is me millennial generation that longs for the things of the past. And you can go in there and just sit down and escape and be like, wow, wouldn't it be great if we could just stay young forever and never grow up and never have to be, we're the only generation that has it worse off than the generation prior. You know what I mean? Like, that's just millennials. And that's just what this was. It was made for us to love it and to cry. But for kids, boring. Welcome to another episode of Is This for Kids? I am Jonathan Bearded Blevins.
I am Katie, Mrs. Ruby.
And boy, do we have an imaginary show for you today.
It's imaginative.
It's imagination.
It's illumination.
I don't get it.
I don't know.
But I have a question for you. I have a fun question for you to kick off today's episode. Can you think of a movie from, it doesn't have to be from your childhood, but just an older movie that was marketed to kids that once you watched it, you were like, that was not for kids and should not have been for kids?
My Girl.
That's the one with the bus.
No.
Yeah, the one where she dies at the end. He dies at the end.
From bees.
From a bee sting, right?
Not a bus.
No, but I thought there was a bus in the movie.
That was My Girl 2.
There is a bus.
You're thinking of My Girl 2. She takes a bus trip to another city.
Okay.
Yeah. But My Girl is about Veda Sultanfuss, who's Sultanfuss, I think, but whose father is a mortician, and so there's dead bodies in her house all the time, and she's like weirdly obsessed with death because she's a hypochondriac, and then her best friend dies.
Okay.
It was definitely for parents.
Yeah, I saw it, cried.
Yeah.
It was super sad. Why do I think why do I picture the kid from that Christmas movie, A Christmas Carol?
It was Macaulay Culkin.
Oh, well.
I don't think you remember.
Never
this
claimed
movie.
to be a film expert. Okay,
no.
I did take a film class
Dan
in college.
Aykroyd
though.
is in it, and what is Jamie Lee Curtis?
Fun fact: the only college class that I ever consumed an adult beverage in was film class, and now we have a podcast called "Is This for Kids?" Drinking during college classes, not for kids.
It's expected during film classes. I took a lot of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, this explains why you're an expert. Okay, the two movies that come to mind for me that are marketed for kids that were not for kids.
Sure.
Never-Ending Story, which we should do an episode about. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
With Atreyu.
And the Rock Eater.
Which then became an awesome metal band.
Yeah.
Hard rock band. Yeah, so that, because the dragon was super creepy. And the horse.
What? The dragon was amazing.
Yeah, he was great. He was my favorite, but he was also really terrifying.
Okay.
And then Bridge to Terabithia. Marketed to kids. Heart-wrenching stuff. Not for kids. Maybe for like teenagers.
I think that one was okay.
Not for
kids.
10 No way.
Yeah.
I was a wreck for 2 weeks.
Well, you're kind of a
Worse
sissy.
than The Notebook. Worse than A Walk to Remember.
You're kind of a sissy.
Worse than the part in A Walk to Remember where the son Landon is driving and he's going to his dad's house.
You've already told this story on the podcast.
He's just weak.
I
already?
Yes, you've told this story on the podcast.
Why do you remember everything and I don't?
It's probably from the drinking in college classes. If I had to guess.
Not wrong. Well, today we're talking about another movie that was marketed heavily, and I mean heavily, towards kids as a kids movie.
Yep, it's PG. It's rated PG.
Absolutely not a kids movie. John Krasinski's If, which stands for Imaginary Friend.
He's wrong.
I'm wrong. No, that's what the movie's called.
No, you're right. It is called that.
Thank you.
That's true.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've never seen anything like it.
Okay.
A movie that is so marketed towards like, hey, your 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old is going to love this. And it was not made for kids at all.
Okay. Which part of the movie did you feel was inappropriate for children?
Should we give a little summary first?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. So you might watch the film and in the first few minutes begin weeping if you're a parent. Because what's that, the movie Up, where there's that montage in the beginning and you're just kind of, everyone's sad. The movie starts like that. Spoiler alert.
It really does.
And there's John Krasinski and his real life wife, I think, actually played the mom. Could be wrong. She might have. Well,
that
she was
not
in the movie.
Emily Blunt.
She was in the movie though.
Yeah, she did the voice of the dancer girl.
See, I'm a genius.
Okay.
I knew she was in the movie. Be proud of me for knowing these minor details.
I'm so proud of you. I'm
Thank
so
you.
proud of you.
So she dies. John Krasinski's character's wife.
Correct.
And the main daughter, who by the way is played by Kaylee Fleming.
And she did a great job.
She did awesome.
Yeah.
The movie, by the way, was very good. It was just not for kids. We're going to get there. Mom dies, which is very sad. They show the whole montage. And then the dad is about to have heart surgery. And so his daughter, who's now 11 or so years old, is living with grandma for a little bit before the dad has surgery and starts to hear some noises, some imaginary friends running around the house.
That is it.
She then meets them and they ask her to help match all these different imaginary friends with kids or to help them find their old kids again.
Yeah.
And so the whole film is that. as she tries to navigate how her dad's going to do and figure out if she's going to actually like be okay with growing up or stay a kid. Would you add anything?
Yeah, key to the story is that
explainer?
They were staying with the grandmother when the mother was undergoing treatment. And so all of the memories that are had in the montage at the beginning are at the grandmother's house. And you kind of get the impression that it's their house, but it's not. It's the grandmother's house that they stayed at while the mother was undergoing treatment before she died. And so being back in this house creates lots of painful memories for the main character, B. Yeah.
Which is, by the way, a very weird name. Almost like naming your dog Maybe.
Well, her name is Elizabeth, and Maybe's an adorable name. He doesn't like Arrested Development, apparently.
Never seen it.
No, there's always money in the banana stand.
Okay, so set the scene for me real quick.
Sure.
About like what your mindset was when you went into this movie, who you went with, did you take your kids, what'd they think, what was your reaction? I want you to go first.
So I took all of my kids to see this movie. My youngest child is 3. My oldest child is 15. She'll be 16 next month. So I have 5 kids, which we don't mention that much on the podcast anymore, but just for the record, 15, almost 16, 14, 11, 10, and 3 are my kids.
Great memory, by the way.
Actually, my 10-year-old is actually 9. He'll turn 10 next month, too. Anyway, I rounded up. Yada, yada, because I want him to learn to mow the lawn. And at 10, you mow the lawn in my house. Anyway, so I took all of them. My husband was working, and I just thought it was going to be a movie about imaginary friends. Like, I'd seen the previews, so I knew that it was like a matchmaker for finding matching an imaginary friend to kids who hadn't grown up or outgrown them. And I watched it with my whole family, and I thought that it was wonderful and sweet and kind and imaginative and beautiful cinematography. Like, all of the scenes are gorgeous. The make-believe house that they go into, there's a time when they go to Coney Island and they go into this thing to see the retirement home for imaginary friends, and it's this magical, beautiful place. I thought it was beautiful, and I'm shocked that you don't think that. I'm actually not shocked. I turned to my daughter as soon as it was over, and I was like, John's going to say that's not for kids. And she's like, yeah, well, John's a wiener. So
we don't call names like that, and this is why you listen to me and not her.
Well, she's 16, so she thinks the fact that she said wiener was pretty tame. Yeah,
that's a good point.
Yep.
For a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not a movie review podcast.
Nope.
But this is a very new movie, and it's, I think, fun to have these little conversations as we talk about whether or not it's for kids. So you using the word imagination about this movie is crazy to me. But like, there's no imagination in any of these imaginary friends. I mean, one of them's like a raccoon with a cape, an ice cube in a glass, a gooey like mess with eyes, a giant pink monster with almost no qualities about him. This is an imaginary friend. You can make it look like anything, and you're going to choose these lame imaginary friends. There's almost zero imagination in any of the movie, but I still really liked it. I liked the movie. I just don't think it was imaginative, and I don't think it was for kids. I'm going to prove that point in a second.
As you do not believe the talking ice cube or unicorn or dinosaur or dragon, as you do not believe that those are imaginary, I'd like to know, are they in the room with us right now, John?
They could be, by the way. I'm still a kid, so I would see them. So they're not. But come on, like, you know what I mean, though?
That's you can imagine imaginative.
Completely different than like the castle that she kind of creates, which is super.
You don't like her imagination, so it doesn't count?
No, it's not hers. It's every kid. Like, every one of those ifs was someone else's imagination.
But the way that she transforms the castle is her imagination.
That part was very cool. That part was great. Cool. But like, I'm talking about the imaginary friends in general, so boring and lame.
Okay.
The whole movie is about this. The CGI is better than it's ever been. That's what you've come up with?
Okay. Most imaginary friends that I can think of were people. So
that's another point I have about why this isn't for kids. Like, kids don't have imaginary friends anymore. It's just not a common thing, I don't think, anymore. And I don't think it has been for like 15 or 20 years, which leads to my point that this movie is just simply not for kids. And I don't think it was, not only is it not for kids, and I'll talk about that. Like, I think it's appropriate for kids, but I don't think it was made for kids. I think it was made for you and me. This movie was made for millennials, by millennials. The trailer was misleading on purpose. It was like, hey, look at all these funny, hilarious moments. No, every funny part was in the trailer. And not like how everyone says, why do I even watch the movie if the whole thing's in the trailer? There were like almost zero funny parts that weren't in the trailer. And some of the funny parts in the trailer didn't even make the movie, which was super weird. So this movie, it pitches it as like this comedy, fun kids movie, when really it's just a nostalgic escapism for millennials. That's what this whole movie is. Okay? Hear me out. You're looking at me like I'm crazy, but I think you're also intrigued.
I swear we saw different movies.
No, hear me out.
What millennial bait was there?
This was made for millennials who don't want to grow up and who think that life is the worst. This was, and by the way, sometimes this is me. I can be this millennial sometimes.
What?
There's no phones in the entire movie, not one. The whole thing is just escaping back into childhood and not having to deal with stress.
Hang on. Is it your
100%.
argument that not using your phone equals escapism?
Yeah.
Scrolling Instagram is what?
No, I'm not saying. Listen, that's fine. I'm saying millennials are watching this movie, thinking back to their childhood and just escaping for a while, and then just weeping. Like, this movie is one of the saddest movies I have ever seen. Everyone in my theater was losing it. I mean, and I was only there with like 20 people. I saw it late last night. I was supposed to go see it with Tyler on vacation. Thank God it was sold out when we went, because we both just would have been a mess and it would have ruined my entire vacation. It was horribly sad, but it was just made for the woe is me millennial generation that longs for the things of the past. And you can go in there and just sit down and escape and be like, wow, wouldn't it be great if we could just stay young forever and never grow up and never have to be, we're the only generation that has it worse off than the generation prior. You know what I mean? Like, that's just millennials. And that's just what this was. It was made for us to love it and to cry. But for kids, boring, bored, wouldn't like the movie, disappointing, not as funny as it should have been. And I can't, how does a kid even relate to that if they don't believe in imaginary friends and they haven't had a parent who's sick? Like, millennials, though, most of us have had a loved one who we've lost or who we thought we were going to lose. So it connects to our hearts, but it's not connecting to most of the hearts of the kids that are watching it. However, I loved it. I thought it was awesome. I would watch it again. I'm one of those millennials who wants to escape and just like go back to when I was a kid, 100%, not have to worry or deal with any of the stress. I'm there. It was made for me, and I liked it.
So when you took your kids to see this movie, what
didn't
did they
take
think?
them.
Oh, because I did, and mine all loved it.
Yeah, but your kids
You're sitting here.
Your kids are different.
Your whole argument is predicated on the fact that kids wouldn't like this movie, and my kids loved this movie.
Yeah, your
even
kids
the
are
tiny little one.
Though. Your kids are different.
Not at all. And when we left the theater, my middle kid, my most normal, like, she's the most normative of kids. So like Maggie, my oldest, is a little bit more mature than the average kid, and you know, fine, I'll give you that. But my middle kid is extremely normal. She loves Taylor Swift. She's that kind of thing. And she came out of this and she's like, okay, everybody, what would your imaginary friend look like if you could pick anything? And everybody in the car said what they would make their imaginary friend look like. Like,
I bet it was more imaginative than the imaginary friends in the movie.
No, it was actually far less. It was far less
a piece of paper, a pencil.
But I think this is one of those situations where, like, yeah, they don't have phones and things like that. And it's definitely for kids. Like, it's all of the things that make childhood fun. The pretending and the finding yourself a quest and having to struggle with growing up and all of those things are present there. And it's still fun. And I think kids, even in this Gen Alpha type situation, long for that. They want the opportunity to do that. And we just keep giving them phones. Like, if we gave them the opportunity and let them have that imaginary fun playtime, they would have it. And I think that kids love this movie because it gives them the opportunity to do that. Not to mention, stories matter. And kids,
I love stories.
Kids encounter death. I hate to be the one to tell you this, and so I'm going to ruin your argument.
I experienced it in Land Before Time. I understand.
Hang on, give me a second. So while we were watching this movie, and I am not going to cry. I'm not going to cry.
This is proving my point.
No,
she's going to cry.
You're going to feel like such an a-hole.
It was made for us to cry.
You're going to feel like such an a-hole.
No, I'm not.
Okay, wait for it. While we were watching this movie, my oldest daughter Maggie's friend was driving home from hanging out with his friends, was in a car accident and died.
Yeah.
Actually, he was brain dead. He was not dead until several days later. But so Maggie's watching this movie with me. She has no idea that this had happened with her friend.
Right.
And she looks at me when the dad is going into the hospital and he's having this heart surgery. And she was crying at first. And then after the movie was over, she said, I stopped crying because I remembered that, like, the nurse came in and she was like, oh, he's just sleeping. And if it had been something bad, they would have told her to come in and say goodbye. So I knew it wasn't that bad because, I knew everything was going to be okay.
Yeah.
And days later, when we find out that her friend has died, that my very young daughter, and this is a thing that you cannot fix for your kid as a parent. Like, they lose a person, you can't bring them. There's nothing you can do. You just sit there feeling impotent and sad. And I looked at her and I was like, do you remember in that movie that we were watching that same day, you said you knew everything was going to be okay. And so you weren't sad anymore. You stopped crying. I was like, we come from a belief system and background, and that kid attends our church with us, and he was to be confirmed that weekend. Like, I said to her, can you apply that to this situation where you know everything's going to be okay? I know people hate to hear he's in a better place now, and like those are things that really are not great to say, but when you think about it, does it help at all? And she was like, actually, I'm glad we saw that movie that time. I think that you're just vastly underestimating the experiences that children have, the range of emotions they have, the way that they feel badly about things, and the way that stories and film can help them learn to process those things. Because this shows a little girl who lost her mother at a very young age and feels the need to now be an adult because of it. She has to take over the mom role. And her dad keeps making jokes about, oh, you're so grown up now. I'm leaving you alone, blah, blah, blah. And he's feeding into it. And he's making a mistake in doing that. And Cal, her imaginary friend, is reminding her she used to be a little girl, like that she still is a little girl. She can still see the imaginary people. She's still a little girl. So even when the entire world wants to tell you it's okay to grow up and move on and process this like an adult, you're still a little girl and you still need to be a little girl. I think it was very important.
But not forever.
Did anybody say forever?
Yeah, the whole point of the movie was completely missed, and tons of critics are talking about the fact that at the end, the grandma is with her imaginary friend again. The guy needed his imaginary friend to feel good about going into the business meeting because his life is too hard without his imaginary friend. There were parts of the movie like that I didn't like. And by the way, I didn't say it was horrible or that kids shouldn't watch it. I just said I don't think it was made for kids.
I do.
I think it was made for you and me.
Totally made for kids
to sit down and have those life lessons with our kids.
There's nothing woe is me in this entire movie. So the fact that you're calling
that guy who needed his monster friend to help him get through his meeting, his hard meeting.
Some people are sweaty, gross sad sacks who need like that just as a fact.
He needs a real friend, not an imaginary friend.
One character in the whole movie does not a movie make.
But he's one of the 4 main imaginary friend characters.
The character.
There's 4 imaginary friends that are main, and he's one of the ones that corresponds.
The imaginary friend, Steve Carell, that voices that imaginary friend, he's not a sad sack. He's fun. He's joyful. Hilarious. He's wonderful.
I feel like you're not hearing what I'm saying.
I think you're being
You
a
can
crazy
disagree
person.
with me, and that's totally fine. I'm totally cool with you
disagreeing with you. There was one sad sack character.
I think it was appropriate for kids. There was almost no language. There was no sex stuff. It was all that stuff's there. I just think I think Krasinski made the movie for people our age. That's all I'm saying.
I think that John Krasinski understands the power of storytelling and the way that storytelling can help kids to process it, can help anyone process things. Like A Quiet Place is a great example of this.
Twice as good.
It's not for kids.
Definitely not for kids.
He does a great job of using storytelling to reach a deep emotional truth that you might not otherwise reach. And I think he does a great job with it here at an age-appropriate level that kids will enjoy and have a good time watching, feel some stuff, and then, maybe have something to reach back on when they have their own life experience that hurts.
I can't wait for the responses that we're going to get on this episode.
I can't wait.
I love it. Did you cry?
No, I don't cry in movies.
See, this is what I'm talking about. You have great kids, but we can't use your kids as an example for the common person.
My husband cries at everything.
They watch a lot of stuff. I'm just saying they watch a lot of stuff. So like they're mature. They're more mature than other kids their age, I would say.
I don't know.
At least when I've met them, they seem to be.
And so like
they could take it. Like I'll tell you right now, any 8-year-old I've ever met would be bored by that movie.
But that's like an argument to be had is like, are my kids more mature because they're just more mature? Or are they more mature because I allow them to experience things like this and to process that?
For sure.
I mean, not that I'm a great human being or anything. They're, whatever. But
you can't be. You didn't cry during this movie, and everyone I know who has a soul cried during this movie. So
I was a military brat. So, I moved a lot.
Girl, I was I was a mess. I was a mess, and both my parents are alive.
Yeah.
I went home and woke my kids up hugging them when I got home.
You are so weird.
What a blessing.
Anyway, where can people find it?
What age would you say? Any age?
Yeah, I would say this is appropriate for any age who would sit through it. Mary is 3 and was entertained throughout the entire movie.
I would say the exact same. I just don't think they're going to like it. But I can't wait to have John on the podcast and talk to him about it.
Hi, John Krasinski. Anyway, if people wanted to see more from us, where could they find us?
isthisforkids.com. We'll take them everywhere.
And we'll take them to Instagram,
where we interact with lots of comments and make really fun content. Yeah. YouTube for these beautiful, full shots.
Our producer says I'm showing too much skin when I have my shoulders out.
He told me that I was burnt and not tan, so I put the tank top away.
He's kind of a jerk like that.
He's great.
Yeah, there's so much content out there for us to wade through as parents.
I'm Jonathan Beard of Blevins.
I am Katie, Mrs. Ruby. Let us help you decide.
Is this for kids?